Listen, it was a hectic day yesterday. It really was. It was very hectic all the way up until this very moment, till about an hour ago when I turned the player on. And I'm running on zero. I think I'm running on negative things. Somebody said, Mike, can we pray to give those storms we have? So, yeah, we have so many in the path. And guess what? A week and a half from now, 300 million Americans are going to be in the path of a bad, bad storm. We have a situation developing that I'll have to explain that. I'm going to explain that one probably during the weekend. We have a very strange, could you guys imagine, right? Just imagine this. Imagine tornadoes from Mexico all the way up to Canada. Yes, I said Canada. Can you imagine that in one day? Can you imagine those storms sweeping from California all the way to Indiana in one day? Could you imagine that? And then, of course, they sweep the rest of the way. Could you imagine that being followed up by stalled low-pressure systems that will stay in the same exact spot for about 7 or 8 days? Till they reach a point, almost a mathematical point, right, of absolute dissipation and depletion. Could you imagine that? We have some very odd, strange weather phenomena forming right now. Personally, I think, you know how a lot of people say, well, this is weather modification, right? True weather modification is cloud generation. I meant to tell you guys that the other day. Mankind has the ability to eject large amounts to two components, right? They can eject into the atmosphere about 10, 20 minutes after that, because they can actually make a cumulonimbus cloud. They can actually make that. But depending on the wind, it will take that cumulonimbus to a specific area based on the jet stream. Then it rains. Just rains. That's the extent of the control of the weather unless they're heating the upper atmosphere, which, by the way, they can't do right now. Do you guys know why? They cannot use microwave heating of the upper atmospheres because our defense net is on. You cannot run those microwave weapons with the defense net active. It won't work. It'll effectively retard the mechanism of defense for the USA. They're not going to do that. They can't do that. Cloud seeding also takes place with hurricanes. They do this often to mitigate the high wind speeds of a hurricane. That's true, too. That's the extent of their control of the weather, right? That's their extent. Beyond that, that's why you see Doppler in these strange patterns. That's why many people have tracked Doppler. They saw strange waves. All they have to do is literally count those waves, right? Count those waves and then factor those waves. And they'll find that they're in the microwave band. They match perfectly based on the actual dissipation of that wave to its destination. Right? It matches the factoring formula of the microwave bandwidth. That's all they have to do is trace that, and they'll see it. That's what they're doing, though. Parts of the chemtrail spraying, they're never going to stop doing that because they have already damaged the atmosphere. Mankind did that, so they have to. You know what happens if they stop? It's going to rain rocks. That's what will happen. It'll start raining rocks. Then we're going to have a real problem. It's going to do that anyway, but it would do that prematurely. We don't want that to happen prematurely. And not stone rocks, like just any rocks. No, not that. You're talking about the coalescing of components that have been ejected in the atmosphere already. Already that happened. We're about to undergo some of the processes of mankind's endeavors because they have made some major mistakes. And there was nothing they could do to cover up those mistakes. So you guys get ready. We have a wild time coming. It's going to be a very trying time, both mentally, right? Mentally, physically, spiritually, but you're promised something. All of you are. Anybody know what that is? There's an appointment for the world you're not to partake of. You are not to partake of this part of the world. You know what it is? You're not appointed to God's wrath. You're not. You're not appointed to his wrath. That means of all these things you see, imagine them almost 1,000 times worse. Imagine things so bad till the population ends up being 1/8 of what it is now. That's very difficult to imagine. Can you imagine being the only one in your neighborhood? The only one. I guess that's what it would be likened to. One person for every, 200-300 square miles? Boy, that'd limit the population, right? Sandstorms all over the place. Zero crops. Zero.